Right. Okay, so like I said, we'll be taking the second phase of project management, and that's the planning phase. I think last week we did the initiation phase with Bola. So today we'll be looking at the planning phase. And for tonight we will cover, just bear with me, okay, cool. It's back on. So we'll look at the meaning, we'll look at the process step by step when it comes to the planning phase. So for the purpose for tonight, we're not going to just concentrate on the agile aspect. We'll look at waterfall and then we'll look at agile also, because there are times when some of their plans look similar and there are times when they are quite different. Even though practically outside there now, there are some of the agile teams that are picking one or two bits of the waterfall artifacts to use, but they're still doing it, iteratively, which is good, rather than doing it the way waterfall does it. But there are some benefits from, depending on the kind of project, really, to doing that. So we'll be looking at both of them together. Hopefully, we would um be able to uh, cover everything that I have for us for tonight. So bear with me, maybe more than that 1 hour, but it's just for us at least to cover a lot. So we'll look at the step-by-step process of both of them. We'll look at the active facts. We'll look at examples. We'll look at the meetings during this phase. Who are the people that attend, the key people, let me put it that way, not just the attendees, but the key people that normally are required to attend these meetings. And then we'll just touch on some of the importance of having a project plan during project management. Okay, so these are the areas that we're going to cover during this session tonight. Okay, so planning phase of a project management. Okay, we know that this is the second phase. Like I said, the first phase being the initiation phase. Out of the 5 phases, the second phase is the planning phase, and that's a phase where a plan is created on how the project will be managed and will be completed. We know there is nothing that anybody does that doesn't have a plan. There is nothing, even in simple life, that you do without having a plan. You don't just go into any project, be it, name whatever project. Let's take it as simple as you want to cook. You have to have a plan. You have to have a list of the things you're going to go and, buy at the markets and everything and all that. You have to have what you want to cook. So you can't just say, oh, I want to cook. And then you start cooking. There has to be the type of food you want to cook. What exactly is that food that you want to cook? What are the ingredients that you need to make those food? Are there some ingredients that you need to prepare before, prepare them before the main cooking? Is it everything you do together? There has to be a plan in place for you to be able to manage that cooking or complete it, and have the desired or expected results at the end of that cooking. The same goes for project management also. There's no way you manage a project without having a plan, a proper plan in place of how it's going to be run, who does what, all those things being put in place. So the outcome of this phase is to have a project plan in place. And your project plan has to have objective, it has to have the scope, you have to have the timeline and the resources. These are all the things you want that might be more than this, depending on the project. Another thing that it has to have, definitely, when you talk about resources, you'll be talking definitely about your budget for those resources and all that. So these are the things you have in your project plan at the end. So that is the outcome at the end that you want to have for that race. And that is understood and agreed by the key stakeholders of the project. That plan, by the time you have that plan, everybody has to be in agreement that is achievable, it is realistic, and also that it is achievable to run that particular project or to manage that particular project. And this project plan, like I said, it outlines all these that are required for that project to be successful. Now, it is an essential document for the project manager. So the project manager might be the one facilitating, but the project manager is not the only one. So he doesn't sit single-handedly create that project. There are other people that are involved, the team members are involved, the stakeholders are involved, because it serves as a map that guides them, through the project life cycle, that ensures that they stay aligned to the goals of the project and they stay focused to the goals of the project. So that plan cuts across what everybody needs to have. So there's a shared understanding by everybody about what needs to be in that plan. So how do we create this plan? Okay, so the first thing we want to look at is the process, which is the step by step. And if you can see the slide we have, I've been able to do the steps of waterfall, the steps for agile also. So I'm just going to explain through them. I'll take the one for waterfall first. So I might go between slides and come back to another to the same slide or the previous slides in order to go through agile. So I'm not going to say, oh, the first step for waterfall is this, first step for agile is this. No, that would be kind of a bit confusing. So I'll take all the steps of waterfall and then I'll come back to take the steps for agile. But why I put them beside one another or each other is for you to be able to see. We talked about waterfall having a comprehensive process and all that. And what happens is for the steps in waterfall, one has to finish before they go into the other one. Whereas in agile, it's evolving. It goes into the plan starts and they start working. If we have to go back to the plan, we go back to the plan again and everything. So it keeps working. It's not sequential like waterfall. Okay. So it's iterative. Once we repeat it, we repeat it, we repeat the same thing, we go along and everything. And that's why the plan in agile is a life plan. Okay, there's room for changing, responding to change, going back to that plan to change. Whereas in waterfall, there's nothing like that, because once that plan has been done, signed off, and all that, the next phase starts, the next phase starts, the next phase starts. So there is no time at any subsequent phase where you're able to go back to the plan to make correction because it has been signed off already. Okay, so the first step for waterfall is to define the requirements. Okay, so the goal for this step is to gather document to gather and document every project requirement in detail before we even start at all. So the meeting with the stakeholders to know what is the need, what is the solution that this project or this product is meant to meet, what is the end user's expectation regarding this project and all that. They gather to have that in place. Okay, so they meet with the stakeholders to identify these, and then they document the functional and non-functional requirements and all that, so that they know what is in scope and what is out of scope. Okay, so let's look at an example of a project where the team is made to create a website for an online bookstore. So there's a bookstore that, a physical bookstore, but because everything is going digital, this stakeholder or this client wants an online bookstore. Okay, and the requirements definitely would include things like login, registration, product catalog, search functionality, and the payment process. Those would be the first few features definitely that they want to see. Okay, so I'm just using that as an example so that we understand of what we're talking about. Okay, so the next step is now to establish, once you're able to define the requirements. Remember, in the initial stage is where you talk about the vision, where you talk about the scope and all that. Now that you have the requirements, you're able now to establish those scope properly. So the goal for that step, the second step, is to clearly define what the project will and will not cover. You want to know what is in scope and what is kind of out of scope. Okay, so for example, we're still looking at the same example that we have, the online website for a bookstore. Definitely the things that might be in scope will definitely include everything that I've made mention of: a user login, search functionality, being able to click on the book, having a catalog, being able to click on the book, maybe okay, so what will be out of scope at that time, at the initial stage, might be a mobile app. So it's just a website we need for now and everything. Maybe once that has been released and they see the reaction and the feedback from the end users, then they can now go to another phase or upgrade for that particular product, which is to ensure that they have a mobile app, which, like I said, another version that is not part of the initial release. So they want to establish that scope initially as they go along. So after that step, after that has been done, the next step would be to develop a detailed project schedule. Okay, so the goal for that step is to create a step-by-step project timeline, outlining when each of the phase will begin and when it will end. Okay, so you develop a schedule for the project that outlines the start and the end of the elements of the project or the product, depending on which it is, with their timeline and the milestones and the expected deliverable. So, like we said, it has its phases. So that project schedule has a phase. So the initiation phase, this is what we want to do in the initiation phase. It's going to be maybe so time and everything. We want to have a design stage. This is what this design stage is going to be. Okay, so that can be an example. Okay, assigning maybe 2 weeks or more for requirement gathering. So, we talked about the requirement gathering. That would be a schedule that, okay, the requirement gathering time, this was what we used. We used 2 weeks to do the requirement gathering. For the design, of the feature that we want to initially release, we want the designer maybe 4 weeks to do the design, make sure everything is shared. There's definitely going to be feedback on it and all that. The designer has done what he needs to do, sign off within 4 weeks, they've done that. And then for development, we're looking at maybe 6 weeks for development. For testing, we're looking at maybe another 6 weeks or 5 weeks for testing, and then maybe 2 or 3 weeks for deployment. That is the schedule that wants to be in place. That's an example of the schedule that needs to be in place. And after that step, the next step will now be resource planning and budgeting, because you need to know all those scheduling. Once you know the scheduling and the timeline, the milestone, those either 4 weeks or 3 weeks or thereabout, that's when you're able to plan your resource. Then you will know that, okay, the developer that we need to do what they need to do, we need them for 6 weeks. So when you're sourcing for that human resources, that labor that you're sourcing for, you're looking for a developer that is going to do 6 weeks. Again, another thing that happens during the stage is where you have a meeting with that developer. This is what we want to develop. This is what we want to do. Because of their own technicality, even though you've scheduled a 6 weeks for it, they're able to tell you that, no, what you're looking at is going to take 6 weeks. And they'll give you a breakdown of why it's going to take 6 weeks. So they're not just going to come and say, oh, it's going to take me 8 weeks to do it. You understand? You're saying, oh, within 6 weeks, we want to do this thing. Is it achievable? Is it realistic? Is it achievable? If it is not, if it's something complex and it's going to take more than that, definitely they will let you know. You bargain with them. Okay, so I know you're saying 8 weeks, but really it's tight for us, money wise and everything. We can do maybe 7 weeks, but not that 8 weeks and all those agreements are put in place. So with the schedule that you've put in place and the timeline that you've put on it, you're able to discuss the resource planning. You're able to look at the tools. If you're going to kind of maybe subscribe for third-party tools to use, you know how long you're going to subscribe for, you know how long you're paying for. Okay, so the goal for that is to identify the resources, the tools, the human labor and everything, and then establish a budget and estimate a budget, put it in place to say, okay, this is what it's going to cost. And like I said, you can't jump the schedule to go and do the resource planning, because you know what is you need what has been the step-by-step of the schedule, like I've explained, in order for you to be able to plan your resource and put a budget in place that, okay, this is what is going to cost us in order to run this project. Okay, so that will be there. And then after the resource planning, okay, so an example of the resource planning, like I said, the development team, you need to know for the designer, for the development team, the tester and everything, what is the total budget that you have for them. Okay, so by the time you are also sourcing for those resources, you're sourcing based on the budget that you have. You're not going to source and go and somebody has come to an interview, who they spoke so well. And even when you budgeted that, oh, this person for the 6 months or maybe a year that we're going to run this project, we're looking at 50,000. But the person has come, bamboozled you with words and everything. And you're thinking, oh, I think he deserves 60,000. You don't have 60,000 in your budget for that person. You have 50,000. Even if it is possible for you kind of to reduce from that, you will even reduce from it. So you want to get the right person, you want to get the best person, but you want to get them also at the right, cost that you have in your budget. So you're working based on your budget, not above your budget or below your budget. You're working based on your budget to do what you need to do. Okay. So the next step is to have a risk assessment and mitigation plan. Okay, so that's what you want to identify. There are some risks that you can identify once you know about the project. Once you understand the project, you will look at, there's some risk concerning it, depending on the kind of project it is, you're able to know. So the purpose of that step is for you to identify the potential project risk and develop a plan for it. So you don't develop the plan when it happens. You develop the plan as you go along. Now, a bit of disadvantage that we have in waterfall concerning that is that you can identify a risk, but that doesn't mean when you're planning, you know how to mitigate that risk. Because especially in a project or a field where things are changing, and that is why waterfall is most suited for projects that don't have constantly changing environment, like the construction company. You're building a bridge, you things have been measured out, their requirements are fixed, so they are able to identify their own risk and mitigate against it at the beginning, at the planning stage, because it's a fixed kind of environment. It's a fixed environment. Your concrete will always be your concrete. The steel rods they put in it is not going to melt today or do anything. It's concrete, is there. The ground that they are building on is fixed. They know the kind of ground that it is. They know what they need to do to implement to have a solid foundation and everything and all that. It's not like IT world, where things change, where you have complexities and all that and everything. So they're able to plan that risk and mitigate it at the start, put that plan in place. They're able to analyze the risk, maybe it's delay, resource constraints, and put a very good mitigation plan in place that is going to resolve that. That doesn't mean all the plans they put in place are able to mitigate it, but at least they have something concrete, and that's because of the kind of projects that waterfall is suited to or suited for. Okay, so they're able to put that in place. So for example, if you're still using the online website for a bookstore that we're looking at, your risk could be delay in development, and then a plan is being put in place. Part of the plan that you can put in place is, when you identify that, okay, so there's every possibility that there might be delay in development, maybe because of the number of developers that we've put in place. Maybe there's every possibility that the developers might fall sick, and we're looking at the timeline that we want to finish the project and everything. So you might put a mitigation plan in place to say, okay, let an extra developer be on standby. So it might be a thing where you have a recruiter that you can get a temporary developer from them, and then putting that also into your costing. So you have some reserve that you have put in place to say that, oh, in case this person, if there's an emergency for any of the resource that you're using and all that, there is a standby, there is a temporary person that knows about this thing and everything that we can bring on board to do things. So those are some of the risks that you might identify early that might become a potential risk that has been put in place. So that's just an example of that kind of risk that might be identified earlier in the planning phase of a project. And then you have the final stage, which is to finalize and approve the project plan. So the goal here is to present that final project plan to the stakeholders and get them to sign off on it, get them to approve it and all that, so that work can start off on it. So you hold a project kickoff meeting with them. You let them review the complete plan, and then you secure their sign off. So they agree to say that, okay, this is okay, everything is the way it should be, and all that and everything. And once that sign off is put in place and everything, that is the planning phase for waterfall complete, and then they go into the next phase to start doing what needs to be done. So quickly, we're just going to go back to see what it is, what the steps are for agile. Okay, so agile, we know, is not sequential. You don't finish your phase and then go into the next one and then go into the next one. Agile is repetitive, is iterative. Okay, so all these things start and then it just we keep repeating it. It's continuous. So with agile, it starts off with having a defined product vision. What is the vision? What vision do we have for this project? So the goal is to outline the high level goals and purpose of the project without detailing all specifics upfront. Okay, so with agile, there is no specifics. You don't cross all the T's and all the I's. You just need a high level goal and purpose of that project. Okay, you collaborate with the stakeholders to define the end goal. What is the end goal? What is the vision? What is the outcome? What is the expected desire? What is the satisfaction for the customer or the client end users when it comes to this project? That is what they know, and then they keep collaborating on it going forward. So once that has been established, once they know that, okay, so for example, you're still using the bookstore. So for a high level goal or purpose for that bookstore for agile could be something like, we want to create a seamless, user-friendly online shopping experience for book lovers. Okay, so you know that it's like a statement, it's like a mandate. This is the end product for us. This is what is looking at. This is the vision that we have. Okay, and then after that, the next step is to create the product backlog. Okay, to create the product backlog, because of that we know, is to establish a prioritized list of features or tasks, that the user stories, that the project should achieve. So this is what we want to do, and these are the list of things that we know that we need, and they also definitely gather requirements. We know in agile also we gather requirements. So once we have that vision, and is while you have that vision, while you are having that question, what do you what is the end goal, what do we want to achieve, and all that, that is where all those clarities comes in. That is why you ask all your questions and everything, and based on all those questions or answers that are being given by the stakeholders and all that, a list is created, and with that list you form your product backlog. And your product backlog, we know, is the prioritized list. So most times we just list things in the product backlog. There is another meeting that we have, which is the refinement meeting, where you refine things. That's when you now prioritize that, okay, based on what we've gathered and all that, for us to do this has to come first, that has to come first, and everything. And that backlog is now refined. But initially, once the requirement is gathered, you just create the backlog, have all the list of the requirements that you need to achieve that product or that project listed in that. And once that has been done, you want to develop. The next step in agile is to develop a release plan. So this is what we want to do. How do we intend to release it? Because you know that one of the principles of agile is that you release early. Is early feedback from the stakeholders, and also to release early. Okay, that's one main value, of having that incremental value at the end of every sprint. So you need a release plan in place. You need to develop a release plan. So that is the next step, and that is to create an outline of how and when deliverables will be released incrementally to the users. So agile, because agile doesn't wait till the end of the whole thing to release. That's why we need that release plan to be in place. You develop a plan that outlines the number of releases that will occur within the project timeline, the goals and objectives of each release. Here you will have to state what is in scope and what is out of scope for each release, the number of sprints for each release. These most times, are fixed. You know that the sprints are 2 weeks and all that. So if you put a release plan in place to say, oh, there will be a release at the end of every third sprint. So we do 1, 2, 3 sprint, there's a release, 1, 2, 3. So we know that at the end of sprint 3, there will be a release. At the end of sprint 6, there will be a release. At the end of sprint 9, there will be a release. So it goes on like that. So that was what I meant by fix. So you don't do a release at the end of sprint 3, and then at the end of sprint 5 or at the end of sprint 4, you do another release, because you know there is a goal, there is an objective for each release stage, and that is what you need to put in that plan. Okay, for an example, still using the bookshop or the book online website, bookstore website, will be, you're thinking, okay, sprint 1, for sprint 1 we just want to gather requirements. Sprint 2, we want to develop the login functionality and the register and login functionality. Sprint 3, we want to develop the profile management, the user's profile page. We want to develop that, and after that we want to release. So by the time you have that in place and all that, oh, there is the login, there is definitely the login, there is the registration, sorry, the login, and then their profile page. It could be like that. It might not be like that. It could be that because you want to add value to the end of every release, it might be we want to have all the features, the product catalog. We want to have the product catalog. We want to have maybe payment process and all that. What will add value to the business at the end of that release might be what you want to be put in place. And then after that might be when you're looking at maybe the next release, you want to do the profile management. We want a situation where the user is able to go into their profile, to maybe change their password, change these details and everything and all that and everything. That can come at the second or the third release, but what add value to the customer and the business also. You have to think about the business value also. So for the business, they just don't want a bookstore that people will come to and look and go. They want at the end of the day for people to be able to at least pay, make purchase. So if they want people to make purchase, then there has to be a payment process, either at the first stage or at the second stage. So that's how you do your release plan. And after the release plan, you're looking at resource allocation. Okay, so how do you resource allocation? So you want to identify and align resources based on the release goals and the objective. Remember when I was giving an example, I said space 1 can just be requirement gathering. So for requirement gathering, you might just need maybe the PO and the BA, and the stakeholders. You might not need the developer, the tech people and all that. So it might not be when you've recruited them for the project. So let's assume that maybe this week we're thinking, okay, the first 2 weeks in November, we just want to gather requirements. So while we're gathering requirements, we have the BA already, the PO is there. While we're gathering the requirements and all that, the line managers, if we don't have enough resources in that organization, to fall into that role, the line manager will be recruiting for the developers. Remember, because we're just gathering requirements, and the people that are going to do that are not necessarily the developers and the QA, so you can be recruiting for them. So those 2 weeks that your BA and the PO are going to gather requirements from the stakeholders, those are the people that you will be paying. Okay, that helps you to allocate your resources better. That helps you to manage whatsoever budgets that you have for that. Okay, so you're able to do that, build the resources. If you need a UI UX designer, you're able to look at it at that level during the requirements gathering. Do we need the UI and UX designer? Because we need them to understand, we need them to come up with a design that we're able to work with. Is the whole team needed for the requirement stage? If they are not needed and everything, then let it just be the people that you need. Definitely, like I said, if you have those resources in the organization already, maybe they are working on another project at that particular time and they don't need to be on this one, so their time is being well used in the other projects they are in before you now pull them or use them as loaned resources or pull them into this new project. And if they're new people that you're getting, again, like I said, if they're not needed for the requirement gathering stage, you're just recruiting them to come in. You don't recruit them before the requirement gathering and say, oh, let them be there. You still need to refine whatever you've gathered and all that. The BA, the POC need to work, write it out. You still need to do refinement. You still need to clarify for them. So it's like doing double job and paying them for something or a stage really that you don't need them for. If you have them in the organization, so some organizations don't mind them starting off, with them and doing all that. But really, if they are not needed, if they will help to save costs. Remember, you're working with a budget also, so you're able to just remove them from that process if possible. And then the other process you're looking at for Agile, the next step will be continuous risk assessment and adjustments. Remember, I said it that with Agile, you don't do it once and stop. It's continuous. Okay. So, and it's to identify risk as they arise during maybe the sprint, and you adjust, you adjust the backlog as needed. So there's a risk, you look at it, you mitigate it. What do we need to do? You adjust things as you go along and everything. So you identify them. It's not as if they are not identified also, but they are not identified with Agile. It doesn't have to be, at the start, that's when we identify all the potential risk or the risk that will be. So once they arise and everything, we review them, we assess them, we put a plan in place, we adjust the backlog as needed in order to kind of mitigate that risk, and then the work continues. So it's a continuous risk assessment when it comes to Agile. Okay. So example is if there's an unexpected technical issue now that delays things, all those impediments that we asked during the daily stand-up, is there any impediment and everything, and somebody say, there's an impediment, there's this and everything, and all that is a risk at that moment. And when they discuss it, when it's being resolved and all that, as I said, continuous risk assessment. It's not at the beginning or at the end. When it comes up, we deal with it and then we move on. And then the next step for Agile will be the review and the adjust. That's the step of showcasing the progress, refine it for future plan. Based on the feedback that you've received from the stakeholders, you reflect on what you've done, which is the retrospective aspect, and then you assess your progress, you put a plan in place, and then you move on. Okay, so for waterfall, that's when they review the plan, the project plan, they sign it off, and that level is done, and they move to the next level. When it comes to Agile, it's continuous. We do it every sprint. There is a demo, there is a showcase of, okay, so this is what we've done and everything. We get that feedback, we adjust that feedback, and then we move on. And then we reflect based on how we've done and everything. Or that feedback, is it something that we could have done better, before the stakeholder, made mention of it? Is it something that we should have looked at? Where did it come from? This is not that we all know that the retrospective time is not a time to lay blame. It's just a time to look at, assess our progress. Could a negative feedback, could we have dealt with it better if we had done? Put a plan in place in order to, assess it, plan things better, in order to get better with the way we're working. And then the last step for Agile there is the adaptive backlog refinement. And that's why I say that when it comes to Agile and all that, we don't do all the scheduling and everything and all that at the beginning. So everybody doesn't need to be there and all that. It's an adaptive backlog. And that's because there is continuous change when it comes to Agile, because of the adjustments that the feedback we've received from the stakeholders during the review stage and all that, it could lead to us adapting the backlog. So we need to go back to the backlog. Maybe because of the feedback, another story needs to come in. That story now takes priority over all the other ones in the backlog. We need to refine things. We need to get clarification more to the team and everything. So there's continuous update on the backlog. We're refining it based on new insight, based on priority, based on change that has come from the stakeholders. So we're regularly prioritizing the backlog as we go along, add more things to it, modify the user stories. It has to be a collaborative thing as the project evolves. Okay. So like using the example of the bookstore now. So if there's a customer feedback that says, and I think it would be better if you add this feature, if we had a book review feature into the place, so that all new people coming in will read that review for the book and everything, and then it will ginger them to be able to purchase that book. The stakeholders want it in. So there's a story that needs to be created to that effect, and they want it in before the next demo. So definitely it goes to the top of the backlog as a priority, that they need this in place. Or they might even say before the end of next sprint, the users wants to see it, so we want it to come in as soon as possible. So that takes priority. It's part of what we will work on in the next sprint, but it takes priority maybe over other things that are there, because of that feedback that has come in, and because you want to keep your customer satisfied, and because we need to keep them satisfied, we need to put that there. Also, it has to work with the value. So it has to work with the project vision. number one. So whatsoever they bring in, the PO has to ensure that it aligns with the vision that we have in place. So the book review is good. It has value, to the business. It has value to the project. So it might be something that we need to put in. So that is the step-by-step process for both waterfall and agile. Okay, so quickly we want to look at also the artifacts. So what are the artifacts? For all these steps that we're talking about, and for this planning phase, what are those documents that we're expecting? What are those artifacts that needs to be in place for each set? So again, I'll do the way I did before. We'll look at the ones for waterfall first, and then we'll go into the one for agile. So we'll look at the document and then the content. What is the content for those documents? So the requirement document, the purpose for this document is to capture detailed functional and non-functional requirement, like I said earlier on, for the entire project. Okay, so it's not just for a phase, it's for the entire project. We want to know what are the functional requirements, what are the non-functional requirements. And having said that, so the content for your requirements document will be the functional requirements. What are those things that are going to be functional on this project and everything? What are the data requirements for that project? You're looking at what is the performance standard for that project, what is the user interface specification for that project. Okay, so those will be the content. Some, not all. Some documents will have even the non-functional, just to put in scope, or to put in perspective, so to say. When you have the functional, they will also say, oh, these are the non-functionals also. So those are the things you want to have in your requirement document. And then looking at the project scope document. So you have a project scope also. So your requirements document, project scope, they can be the same document, okay, just on different section. So for the project scope, you're looking to clearly define the boundaries of the project, like I said earlier on, including what is included, what is out, or what is not included. So you're looking at the deliverables for this project. These are the deliverables. So for these deliverables, these are the features that are going to be in focus. Okay, these are the things that are going to be in focus. These are the things that are going to be out of focus. And then assumptions also, you have to be able to list out part of the assumptions also, and the constraints also. So you're looking at, for assumptions, you're looking at things like, it won't be assumed. Okay, so for assumptions, let's look at a situation. You still using that bookstore that we talked about and everything. So there we don't want to put an assumption in place to say, oh, this online bookstore is academic, or this online bookstore is just for um socials, or I'm just going to be able to get novels and things. Those are assumptions and constraints that you don't want to be in place. So for that project scope, you need to be able to put those things in place. For this online store and everything, what exactly does it deal with? Is it academic books that we're talking about? Are we talking about magazines? Are we talking about an online store for medical books and things like that and everything and all that? And all that definitely will be, all those assumptions will definitely stated in, maybe the website has an about us for the websites and everything. All those things would have been able to clarify in there. So me going into that website and everything, checking the about us, and I'm seeing that, oh, this is a medical online, and I'm not a medical person, I'm not interested. I don't need to waste my time browsing through or going through that website and everything. Or if you have a child that is going to medical school and everything and all that, you're able to browse through there to say, oh, let me see if I can get this book that my child talks about and everything and all that. Those are some of the assumptions. You don't want to jump into the assumption that every online bookstore has what you want or has what you have and everything. So those are some of the things you want to outline out in your project scope. And then another artifact you're looking at is the work breakdown structure. Okay, so for your work breakdown structure, the purpose is to break down the project into smaller, manageable, task or work packages. And then it shows all the things that need to go. For example, You might have a work breakdown structure showing, oh, these are the front end development, this is the back end development, this is the testing stage. One has to finish. The back end development has to finish before the front end development starts and before the testing starts. So that's breaking it down into structure, into all those different phases that needs to happen and everything, and each with its own specific subtask also in an hierarchy form. Okay, so for your work breakdown structure, you have contents like I said, the task hierarchy with the work, and the work packages is stated there. You have the deliverables for each um sub subsections. You have all the deliverables, you have the dependencies. One of the dependencies is like you can't start a login without having registration, because your login, the what is needed for you to log in needs to start first with your registration. You need to register first before you do the login. So all those things are there. And then you're looking at the timeline. The timeline for each section and everything is being stated in your work breakdown structure. So with your work breakdown structure, you're able to see, okay, this task needs to be done and all that. We've arranged it in this format and everything, but it has these dependencies. There's some dependencies that might be system related, system security related, that might be out of the hands of the development team. Maybe they need to meet with the organization's security or infrastructure or the IT department and all that. That especially things that has to do with payment. The system has to be secured and all that, and the infrastructure or the IT department needs to work with the team in order to ensure that some of the data that will be sent for payments and all that, your users' data that is going to be sent, they are encrypted. They can't be hijacked by anybody. Their data can't get missing or hijacked by anybody and all that. You want to make sure that compliance, regulation, payments regulation, and everything is being followed, as things should be. So when you have a work breakdown structure, all those dependencies will be you will put them down so that delays are minimal. Let me put it that way. So it's not as if there won't be delays, but they are minimal, because once you have a work breakdown structure, you know the time when those things are needed. And while maybe the developers need to develop this and everything, you as a project manager, you're meeting with all those external team members of the organization, but they are external to your development team to say, oh, we need this in place. This is the system architecture and all that and everything. You're meeting with your compliance team. They are validating that, okay, yeah, that's fine. You just need to put this and this and this in place. The team that needs to put all those things in place, if it's not the development team, you're meeting with them, you're explaining to them. Your tech lead is going with that meeting, into that meeting with you, because as a project manager, you might not have that technicality to explain those things or to have an understanding. So when the tech lead goes with you, they're able to discuss things properly, put those things in place. So at the right time, when those encryption and everything are needed, everything is working, well, the way it should. So that wouldn't be kind of a delay or a blocker to the project being released at when it's meant to be released. So all those are put down in your work breakdown structure, okay, with their timeline also. So after that, another artifact that needs to be in place at your planning phase is your resource plan, okay? So most times people join the resource plan and the budget together, because when you're talking about the resource plan, you also want to put the budget in place to say, well, this is the estimated budget we have for this person. So the purpose for this is to detail out the resources that are needed. It could be labor wise, it could be tools wise, equipment. So it could be the team members, it could be software equipment that are needed, that are required or needed for that project to to be actualized, okay, at each stage, or for each task and all that. You're able to plan that resource in. And the content you're looking for this artifact of the document is the list of team members and their roles. You want to put the list of the equipment and the tools. You want to allocate resource to each project phase. Okay, so the initiation phase, who do we need? What is the role of the person that we need? How long do we need this person for? How much are we paying this person to do this? So if your UI UX designer, for instance, might not be throughout the stage, might be just maybe during the planning stage stage or the initial stage, you want to know how long is it going to work for, how much are we paying the person and all that. You're looking at your development team, you're looking at your developer, because they have their own stage also. You're looking at your BA, she has her own stage also and everything. How long do you need to work for? How much are we paying? So with your work breakdown structure, you are able to use your resource, you're able to do your resource plan also. And these are the contents that you want to put there. Okay. So again, it could be together with the budget, and then you can do it separately. So you can have a resource plan first and then now put your budget in place. So because you have the resource plan already to say the list of team members, the time when you use them for, the equipment that they are going to use and everything for each stage or each phase and everything, and then you're now able to budget a cost, have a cost breakdown, towards that and everything. So still using the example of the bookshop, the online bookstore that we're looking at about, you're able to include things like maybe 20,000 pounds for design, 50,000 pounds for development, because we've put the resource down, the number of team members that you need, what you want to pay them, how long they're going to work for. So you're able to have a total, you are able to have a budget in place to say maybe the developers is 50,000 pounds, testers maybe 30,000 pounds, and so on. So the content you're looking at for this artifact or document is the estimated cost breakdown. It's going to cover each phase. It's going to cover the resources or the materials or the equipment that are needed. And also you need a budget reserve. So your budget reserve is a portion of your total budget, the total budget that you've been given. You just want to put a portion, you set it aside to deal with some unexpected expenses or emergencies. So if you have a budget of 1 million, there is a percentage that the work, I think is, I'm not sure if it's 10 or 15%, to say 10% or 15% of your total budget is what you want to put aside as reserve. So you know that if you have, like I said, 1 million and you're setting, if it's 10%, you're setting 100,000 pounds aside. So you only have 900,000 to budget, because your reserve is what that is for contingency, is a contingency fund. You don't want to touch it. It's for emergency. Okay, so you want to focus that, okay, so what I have is just the 900,000, not 1 million. Okay, that's just an example. So that's that document. And then you're looking at your risk assessment and mitigation plan. So the purpose for this one is to identify, like we said earlier, on potential risk, and then strategies that you need to mitigate them. So, okay, so for instance, the risk document can be list of delays to software development, or the plan to bring on additional a developer, as we've said earlier on. You want to put all that plan in place, and the content of that document or that artifact is the list of the identified or possible risk. So remember, there are possible risks or some that you've already identified that, okay, this might happen and all that and everything. What is the probability? Is it high? Is it medium? Is it low? What is the impact? You want to describe the impact. If this risk is in place and everything, this is the impact it's going to have on the project and everything. And then you talk about your mitigation strategy. That's your plan to say, this is how we want to resolve it if it happens and everything. Have a document that says all that. Okay, so quickly we'll go to the agile aspect of things. The artifacts for agile definitely would be the product vision statement, which already example I gave it when we were looking at the when we're looking at the explanation of that step, the process. Okay, it might be is a statement really to say, okay, this is the statement, this is the vision of this project, this is what we're looking at when we're talking about this project. Okay, so that is an artifact that you want to put in place, and the contents for that would be a brief description of that statement, which at times is a mandate, at times it's just a statement. It's just it might be just a 1 line or 2 lines, which, like I said earlier on, I give an example of it. It's high level, an overview of what the project aim to achieve. Okay, and then who are your targeted audience? What is the objectives? What is the project value? What is the business value? What is the value of this product to the to the end user? What is the value of those products to your clients that is bringing it? Okay, so they have their own customer. What is the value to the customer? Those are the end users. And then what is the value to the business that is bringing this project to you, for you to manage? Okay, so that's one of the artifacts when it comes to Agile. The other one is the product backlog item, which I think is everybody on this call is used to. You have it on your project board. You know what it is. Okay, so it's the list of all the requirements that needs to be developed, tested, working appropriately, and that adds value to that product or to the project that you're doing. And the content that you'll have in your product backlog is the list of the user story with their priority, the description, which you will find the acceptance criteria. This must be met, this should be met, this ought to be met, all those and everything, they are listed in there. And then you have kind of an initial estimate of effort. So it will take maybe, all those story points. That's what we're looking about. So there's an initial story point that is being put on it before even you have to work on it, before the sprint you bring it into, which maybe doing refinement before that sprint, you're looking at that estimate on it, the story points on it, and saying, is it still the same? Based on what we know now, is it still the same? Is there some complexities now with what we know now? With what we know now, is the story point needs to be reduced? Should it be increased or reduced? All those things are part of the content of what you have in your product backlog. And then you look at your release plan. Like I've explained what the release plan is and the purpose of why we have a release plan, to understand the scope of work involved in the incremental releases, that we need to do, the timeline, the estimate. And it helps us also, the purpose is, it helps you also to kind of have an overall timeline for the project. Because if you have the release, if you're saying at the end of 3 sprints, we need to release this and everything, and we look at it and we know that we have, okay, maybe for the whole project, we just need 6 releases, and we're looking at the end of each 3 sprints we release. So you're looking at 3 times 6, and you know that 18 sprints is what is going to take us to finish this. So if you're looking at 18 sprints is what is going to take us to finish what we're working on. Each sprint is 2 weeks. So we know that that's another 18 times 2, which is 36. So 36 weeks is what is going to take us to finish this whole project. And with that, that's us looking at maybe 3 years or things like. So that's just an example, of no, not 3 years really. That's, if we're saying 36 weeks, it's not even up to a year. Okay, so roughly that is just what we're looking at when we look at our release plan. And we said, like they said, the content is the goals and objective of each release stage. You look at the description of your release for that stage, the list of deliverables. So for this release, this is what we're looking at. These are the list of the things that are going to be released, and then the target date for each release phase. You're also able to put that there. So that's another artifact that you have in place for Agile. So the next one would be the definition of done. Okay, which is DOD for short. So the purpose for this is to establish criteria that must be met before a work item is considered completed or done. Okay, so it's like it's a form of checklist. The things you want to take, that when it comes to the coding, has this been done? Yes. Has this been done? Check. Has this been done? Check. And everything. So for the content, what is coding? What is the coding standard that you want to have before we consider that the developer has finished what they need to do? What are the criteria that needs to be put in place for the coding for the developer? The testing standards that needs to be in place. What are those things that we want to, as a team, agree that, once the testers are able to do the manual testing, once they've done the automation, once we make any changes and they've done, all the things that needs to be done, refactoring, regression, everything, are those the standard that we want to put in place for our testing before we believe that, the tester has finished what they need to do? The code review, do we want code review to be in place? All those things, documentation for a particular definition. No, not definition of done. So after your testing, do you want documentation? Your documentation could be UAT being signed off by either the product owner or the BA. So all these checklists, you want it to be in place before a requirement is considered completed. Something might also say that, okay, after that has been done and has been completed, the UAT done. So the UAT might be done by the PO, the UAT might be done by the BA, the UAT can be done by the stakeholders. So the stakeholder might be the one that wants to do the UAT and all that and everything. After all those has been done and everything, that is when you now accept that that particular requirement or that product backlog item has been completed. Also, another artifact for Agile is the ways of working agreement. Okay, that one is very kind of very important. So the ways of working agreement, the purpose is to outline the team's shared understanding, of their communication practices, their sprint duration, their collaboration norms. So we want to put all those in place to say, for us, this is an agreement. This is a shared understanding. This is our development process. This is our testing process. These are the things that that needs to be in place. So you're looking at what is their agreed communication plan or process. What is their meeting schedules? What is the feedback protocols? So how do they get feedback from um the the stakeholders? So after the demo, do they also send kind of a link to the stakeholders so that the stakeholders also themselves do some testing, not just the one you've showcased to them. They do some testings themselves, and then you send them kind of a document, maybe a Zelle document, or you are on the same Teams channel with them, whereby they drop comments and say, "Oh, we've tested it. Oh, I noticed this. We thought it was going to work, but it's working this way. Oh, that's not really what we wanted, and everything." Can that be looked into? What is the feedback protocol that needs to be in place? You want to know that, and the decision-making plans. You want to know that also when it comes to some decisions, you want decision-making plans. Who are the people that needs to be there? Is it the PO and the tech lead? Does it have to involve every of the team members or just the tech lead so that, kind of you're also putting lean agile into place, not wasting time, people that don't need to be in meeting at a particular time or are not required, let me use that word, to be in meetings, are doing what they need to do. Why? Maybe it's just the tech lead that needs to be in meetings with the PO, and then they give feedback to them, even though we know their transparency. Okay, so it doesn't mean that once the tech lead goes into meeting with stakeholders and everything and all that, they don't give feedback to the team. So definitely they will meet with the team, they will give feedback. Maybe if quick update, maybe during the stand-up, and if it needs more ad hoc meeting, all those are done. And what that is doing is just so that you don't put people in meetings when really it's more of they are not needed. They don't even talk throughout the meeting and they are wondering why they are sitting down there. Why am I in this meeting? Bob as the tech lead alone should be in this meeting because he's the one that is talking, but he will just come back, and give us feedback and update us on what needs to be done. So all those decision-making plans, you want to make sure that they're in your ways of working agreement as a team for Agile. And then also definitely, we talked about continuous risk assessment and all that. So you want to have a risk assessment or dependency log as you'll have it. That's the Scrum Master look at as the go ahead. And the purpose for that, definitely we know what the purpose for that is just for us kind of to also document risk, document any impediment, and then identify throughout the sprint really and update it as it go along. Put a plan in place, and once that plan has been met and all that, not the plan, the mitigation action, once the dependency of the risk has been resolved, also we document it. And what this risk assessment or dependency log really helps with is in future when you have the same kind of issue coming up, there is a record you can go back to check to say, oh, we had this thing about 3 months or thereabout ago. How did we manage it? And then looking at that document to say, oh, this was how we managed it. This was the person, that resolved it and everything, falling back, to resolve it. Let's now assume that even the person that resolved it 3 months ago is now on holiday. But because they've put down the way it was resolved, or somebody know how it was resolved. We have a document so we can go back on to say, oh, this was how it was resolved then. And then we have somebody else in the team that is able to look at that and also be able to resolve that issue when it comes up again. So these are the logs that you want to put in place just to keep record, like I said, and also to manage and mitigate the risks that you have. Okay. So those are the documents that we have for um Aja. Then quickly, there's one that I not missed out really, but that's the communication one, communication artifacts for waterfall. Okay, so when it comes to Agile, the communication is part of the ways of working, but with Agile, with Agile, communication is part of the ways of working, but with waterfall, it stands as an artifact on its own. Okay, and the purpose for the communication plan or document that is to outline how the project information will be communicated, to stakeholders, to team members, meeting schedules and everything and all that, which, like I said, is already captured in the ways of working for Agile. Okay. So, and the content, for instance, there could be plan, might specify maybe weekly status meeting for the team, bi-weekly progress reports given to stakeholders that might be in place. And the content of this artifact is, like I said, communication method. What is the method? What is the frequency of that communication? What is who are the targeted audience? Is it the development team? Is it the stakeholders? And then the report format. What format are you using to do your report? Is it an email that you're sending to them? Are you making PowerPoint reports that you're sending to them? Are you doing Power BI reports that you're sending to them, or you're doing both together, both paragraphs and charts, so that you give them a better understanding? Okay, so these are some of the artifacts that we have. So we're just going to look at a few examples of those artifacts, like I've said. So this is an example of a work breakdown structure. Okay, you can see on the left where they have the task ID number. You can see the description of what it is, who is the owner. Not all work breakdown structure have percentage complete. You will definitely have a start date and an end date. The priority will be there. It's dependent. If there's any dependency, you want to put that there. Imagine if on this work breakdown structure now, they've had the login first before having registration. So where you have dependent on, then that one being done will be dependent on where you have the ID that you have for the registration. And that work breakdown structure at times also, once you put it down and everything, you're able to reprioritize things, move things. Definitely that the login is dependent on the registration. Let's assume that they've put the work login in maybe sprint one, using the work breakdown structure now as an example for Agile, but definitely we know we don't use it for that. And then that definitely registration needs to happen before we have that. Or there is a design that the UX designer didn't do and the developers needs to do something, just aligning it and ensuring that the dependencies you've put them. So if a dependency is medium, if a dependency is medium and a particular task is high, so you have a high. Okay, so let's look at the example they have here. So you have an example where 1.1.1 is dependent. So 1.1.2 is dependent on 1.1.1 being done. So before you can retest, a bug, they have to fix the bug first. So all those dependencies and all that are things that you want to put down in your work breakdown structure. Again, this is just an example. That doesn't mean all work breakdown structure would be this way. Okay, this is just an example. So quickly, also, we want to look at a release plan. Okay, so not all release plan looks like this, but this is just an example again of a release plan. You want to list down all the features. You want to list the sprints where they are going to occur. You want to list out the goals. You want to know the status. So once it's done, like we said, remember, majority of the artifacts you have in Agile, they are live documents. So they are documents you go back to change based on feedbacks that you've received. So it's good to have a status on your release plan to say, oh, is this one plan? Has it been completed? Has it been assigned? Is it in progress? And things like that. You want to put that there. But it's good to have the goals. It's good on your release plan to have the deliverables. Okay. So it's good to have the deliverables in there, even though you have the feature name, you want to have the deliverables. I know the one I'm showing you doesn't have, but you want to have the deliverables, there also. So that's an example. And then this is an example of a resource plan with budget estimate. So you can see the resource plan on the resource name. You have the resource ID, which is just the serial number, and then you have the resource name there. You have the resource type also. You need to have the resource type. You need to have the description also in place. You have to have the availability start date. You have to have the availability end date, and then you're looking at the cost per hour for that particular resource. Okay, so you want to have that in place. This is just an example again of what a resource plan with budget, just a basic one. This is what it looks like. And then we want to also look at a risk assessment with mitigation plan. This is another example of that. You want to know the description of your risk. You want to know so not all risk plan has the impact level, probability level, and all that. Definitely it will have probability. Okay, so your probability then will be either high, medium, or low. And then people use color because color helps you, it shouts out to you. Imagine if this one that is being shown, all the color codes are in red. So that's high risk kind of for this particular risk assessment. And then you can see the impact description there. What impacts does this risk have? You also want to know the plan, the mitigation plan. So this one says contingency plan is the mitigation plan. And who is the owner? Who is the owner of the risk? Is the owner of the risk also the one that needs to carry out the task that we've put down to resolve it, the mitigation plan? Is it the same person? So there are some risk assessments where once they put the risk description, they put the owner of that risk. And then when they put the contingency plan, they put the owner of that contingency plan. And what that helps you to do is once you have that in place, once you have that kind of situation arising again, like I said, it's something that can arise later on, and you think about it, you said, oh, this happened 3 months ago and everything and all that. This is the plan that was put in place. Who did it? Okay, so it might not be everybody that has the skill set to be able to carry out that resolution. So who did it and everything? If you know who did it, if the person is able to, if the person is around to do it, that's fine. If the person is not around, if there's another person who has similar skill sets who can look at the mitigation plan and be able to carry it out, then fine, because so we don't have bottleneck where one person is holding the whole team down and all that. That's why we do that. And we know that when it comes to agile, we don't have that because we have cross-functional team. Okay, so those are examples. So quickly, we also now want to go to the meetings. For this phase, what are the meetings that we have and who are the key attendees of this meeting? So what we said is the key attendees. So they might not be the only people, but these are the people that are required to be in this meeting during this planning phase. So you have for waterfall, again, I'll go through the waterfall one and then I'll come back to the agile side. So for waterfall, you're looking at the project kickoff meeting. That's one of the meetings that they do. Okay. So the meetings are arranged in no particular order. Okay. So one of the meetings you have at the project kickoff meeting. Okay. And the purpose is to introduce the project to all the key stakeholders, the team members, establish the objective, align everyone, have a shared understanding, align everyone to the project goals, the timeline, the responsibilities, and all that. And like I said, the key attendees that you have here are the stakeholders. You have the project manager, the business analyst, you have the UI, UX designer, you can have the tech lead in this team, you can have the team, all the developers, the testers in this, but the required people are the people that have been listed there. And also you have the requirement gathering meeting or meetings. Okay, so it might be more than one. You might need to meet with stakeholders more than one in order for you to gather the requirements. And we know that the purpose for that meeting is for us to collect the detailed requirements from the stakeholders to have an understanding of what the project needs to deliver. Okay, so what you need to do at that meeting is to discuss the project scope. You want to conduct interviews, you want to gather information from the stakeholders, you want to document the functional and non-functional requirements, as we said earlier on, okay? And the outcome of this meeting is to have a detailed requirements document outlining all necessary functionalities. That's what you need. And the key people that needs to be at that meeting are the stakeholders, definitely the project managers and the business analysts. If it is a team that doesn't have a business analyst, then that means it's the job of the project manager. And there are some teams that they have project managers and they have product owner. That you see that most times in a situation where you have both um the team using Wagile, if I can say that, that's using both approaches in managing that project. Okay, so those are the key or the required people that need to be at that particular meeting. Okay, so quickly we want to look at the scope definition meeting. Okay, so the purpose is to clarify and finalize the project scope. We want to specify what will and what will not be included in the project to avoid a situation where you have a scope creep. We know scope creep is when you have an increase requirement being added. You know, there's every possibility, or it's normal for stakeholders to look at what you've done and then they just start adding things that have not been initially aligned. That doesn't work for waterfall, because you know that waterfall, once they sign off, they sign off. They can't bring new things in. There's a possibility that, oh, but you've signed off. That part wasn't part of what you've put in place and all that. Okay. So that is what you have at the scope definition meeting. So at this meeting, they discuss the in-scope, like I said, and the out-scope features. They clarify any constraints. They confirm the stakeholders' approval, because they don't want scope creep, is why they confirm the stakeholders' approval at that meeting. And the outcome we're looking at is a finalized project scope statement, which has been signed off by the stakeholders. So the key attendees of that meeting is a stakeholder, the project manager, the business analyst, the UI UX designer can be there, a tech lead can be there if that is needed, you know, for some technicality aspect of things also, that can be there. So the other one we want to quickly look at it for the waterfall is the work breakdown structure meeting. So it's not a meeting, or it's not a document that is created by the project manager. So the project manager can create the document, where it needs to be reviewed by all those key or required attendees, so that is agreed by everybody that, okay, this is what the work breakdown structure looks like for this project, you know. And like I said, the purpose is to break down the project into similar and manageable tasks, ensure that each aspect of the project is planned and accounted for. You know, the technical aspect, the tech lead is able to say, okay, this is what is needed when it comes to this technical bit, which the project manager might not, you know, be able to put down. So when we're putting down the work breakdown structure and all that, the tech lead will review such a thing and say, okay, so you've missed a bit out, this needs to be there, this needs to be there. All those things are, they review the document, all those things are put in place. And that's to add the key activities is to identify the task, organize the task hierarchy, the way it should be, what comes first before the other one, assign preliminary resources and timeline to things. And then the outcome is to have a detailed work breakdown structure and an initial task assignment. That's what it is. And the required people, like I said, that needs to be there is the project manager, the business analyst, the UI UX designer is there, the tech lead is there. Now the stakeholders are not there, because this is the work breakdown structure of what needs to be done. So the stakeholders are not supposed to be, or are not required, let me put it that way, to be at that particular meeting. And then the other one we want to quickly look at for waterfall is the project timeline. I've started that with budget review meeting. So the purpose of that meeting is to confirm the project timeline, look at the budget, the resource allocation, you look at the aligning expectation with stakeholders and finalizing the project cost. Okay, so all those things need to be discuss and be in place. And what we're looking at there is to review the timeline. Okay, so if the timeline is not realistic, the timeline that maybe the project sponsor, so because your project sponsor, they brought a project to you and they said, oh, we want this and we want it done in the next 3 months, we want to start using it in the next 3 months and all that and everything. And you've gone to do your project breakdown structure. The technical people have come in and all that. The tech lead have told you that this is complex. There's no way we can do it within the timeline that has been said, especially where you have external team that needs to come in, especially when you have compliance issues that needs to be resolved, when you have payment is not payment process in place is not something you just do and everything. There's a lot that has to be, you have to be careful with people's data and all that and everything. So you're able to discuss with your stakeholders, with the project timeline, you're able to confirm, what is realistic and what is achievable. Let me put it that way. Availability, and then you finalize the schedule and all that. And the outcome that you're looking at for that particular meeting is a finalized um um a finalized work breakdown structure, that has been finalized, and also a finalized budget document that everybody agrees to, the stakeholders have signed off or are signed off on. So the key people that need to be at that meeting really are the stakeholders and the project manager. So the project manager is the one that goes, again, like I said, if there is any technical bit that the project manager feels I won't be able to explain this aspect and everything, there's every possibility that it might say the tech lead should go so that they are able to explain one or two things to the stakeholder. In short, your stakeholder doesn't even want to know about the technical bit. All they want to know is that I need this thing and I need it by this time and all that. But your project manager, because of their expertise and because of their engagement and because they know how to manage the stakeholders, are able to explain some things better to them, be objective with them and all that, and then get to, like I said, a finalized resolution at the end of the day. Okay, so the other meeting quickly that we want to look at for the waterfall is the risk assessment meeting. So the purpose of this meeting is to identify potential risks, as you said earlier on, and then the key activity is to brainstorm the risk, they assess it, probability of it, impact, and develop mitigation plans. Okay, so for some projects, there are times when some team also in preparation for risk assessment, they also do risk awareness. And what risk awareness is to gather everyone involved in that project, the development team, everyone that is involved and everything, to say, okay, so we have a risk awareness document, could be a spreadsheet and all that. If there's any risk in your own expertise that you think, for this project, identifying this potential risk that might happen, the project manager might not be able to think about all this risk. There might be some technical risk that is the tech lead or the system architecture or somebody else that might think about it. But where there is a risk awareness document, register, log that is being put in place, shared with every other person, they're able to put those things down. And that is what the project manager now consolidates together in order to form the risk assessment register or the risk assessment log or document. Okay, and then being able to now review everything that is being put there to say, okay, this person, you're the one that put this, how do we mitigate things going forward? And then being able to put all those plans down. So at the end, the outcome you're looking for this meeting is a risk management plan. Okay, so we have a plan in place. It's listing all the potential risks, is listing the likelihood it might happen, is the probability it might not happen, what is the impact, describe the impact, and then what mitigation plan do you think or should we put in place in order for us to resolve this in case it happens, even if it happens, or that what do we need to do now in order for it not to even be a risk at all and all that. And the key people that are required at that meeting is the stakeholders at times, the project manager, because you want to carry your stakeholders along about the risk. You want to let them know that, okay, there's a potential risk. We're not saying it's going to happen. We're just saying there's a potential risk. We want to carry them along. So they are required to be at that meeting. The project manager is required to be there. The business analyst, the system architecture, it could be the tech lead, depending, and the ones that are supposed to be there. So I think that's the last one for the waterfall. So quickly, let's look at the meetings we have for Agile. So, okay, the first one is the product vision meeting, because we talked about having that in place. So we want to look at the product vision meeting, and the purpose of that meeting is to define, like we said, high level vision and goal for that product, aligning the team, to the purpose and the primary objective of it. Okay, so that's one of the things we want to look at. We want to define the product vision, objective, the target, who are the target audience, just like we have, with waterfall. So there's a bit of similarities there. Who are the target audience for this product that we're making? Just the high level goals that needs to be in place. And the outcome we're looking at for this meeting is to have a statement in place at the end of that meeting. We'll have to have, like you said, your project mandate. What is the mandate? To build a website, to build a user friendly bookstore, online bookstore for the clients or their customers or things like that. You want to put that as a statement, and that statement guides the project direction, so to say. So the key people that are required to be at that meeting, you have the stakeholders, the product owner, the scrum master or APM or ADM, depending on what that person representing that organization. And then you have the developers. When I talk about developers, we're not talking about just the software developers. We're talking about the BA, the QAs, the devs themselves are going to be at that meeting. So again, it's optional. You might not get the developers to be at that meeting, but you want to get them also on earlier on, so that everybody has a shared understanding, depending on what the team wants to do. So also you have the product backlog refinement meeting. So we have a product backlog refinement, which product backlog, like we said earlier on, or we said initially we just list things into it and all that. And that is when everything is being listed in there, might not be when the developers are there. So by the time you're refining, which I know I've already spoken about, so the refinement aspect of it is when you have all the teams that are going to work on it coming together, to talk about it, prioritizing the user stories that are there, helping the team to understand and align with the project needs and priorities. So imagine if your developers and all that are not at the requirement gathering stage. This is where they have an understanding of that of that project, of the what is expected, what is the ask for that project. Okay, so they brainstorm, they prioritize the story, they estimate the effort. Clarity is provided by the PO or the BA if they have a BA for that team. So clarity is provided, and at the outcome is to have an initial backlog containing a prioritized story. Now, the stories are not just titles, they have all the description, acceptance criteria, what needs to be done, at times wireframe to guide, the developers and the keyways. All those are listed there. And the key people that you want at that meeting are the product owner or your BA, your scrum master, APM, ADM, who they are, and then the developers. Every time I say developers for Agile, please be aware that it includes the BA, the dev, and the keyways. Okay, so the next meeting we have for Agile is the release planning meeting. Okay, so the purpose for that meeting also is to have a release schedule of major increments. Okay, and then determine what feature will be released at what time for each release, like which we've discussed already. What is the goal? What are the deliverables, that needs to be at that particular release? And then what we're looking at, we're defining the release goal. This is the goal for this particular release. We want an MVP, we want the registration and the login, we want the registration login and the search functionality. It depends on what the goal is. And then the deliverables for that particular release is discussed, or all the releases, the deliverables for them are set out. You set out the preliminary release date is set out there. The outcome is to have a release plan outlining the major increments and the delivery timelines. And the key people that needs to be at that meeting is the product owner, BA, scrum master, and the dev lead at times. So this is a meeting where I said the dev lead might go and have that meeting, have that discussion, and all that. All the developers they don't need to be at that meeting. So once you do that, what you're just trying to do is to prevent time wasting, so to say. But this is where lean agile comes in at times and is a good practice at times. So they are not being taken out. There's still transparency because they would get to see that plan. Okay, so we know that for every thing we do, there's a project board where you have a wiki where you add things to, you have the SharePoint where you add things to, you even share it on the Teams channel, to say, oh, we had the release plan that's been reviewed, it has been agreed, just for you to kind of preview and all that. You share that with them. So you're not doing anything behind. You're being visible and you're being transparent with them, with the whole team. Okay. So and then we have the definition of done meeting, the DOD meeting. Okay. So the purpose is to define the criteria, like I said earlier on, for considering a task or a user story as completed or done. And it ensures that everybody has a shared understanding of what that standard means. So this is all the team agreeing to it. It's all the teams that come to the meeting, the product owner, the BA, the Scrum Master, the developers, is most times facilitated by the Scrum Master. Most of the some of the meetings in Agile, not all. Some of the meetings in Agile, some are facilitated by the product owner, but they facilitate that meeting. And at that meeting, we identify the essential criteria for task completion. You list quality standard, you list set documentation, you list testing requirements and all that. And at the end, what you're looking at to get is a definition of done, documents to be used, and it is validated by every member, agreed by every member. So every member has a shared understanding and they all agree that, oh, yes, this is a document, a checklist that we want to work by as a team. And then we have the ways of working agreement meeting. Again, that's another meeting that incorporates every member of the team, the product owner, the BA, the Scrum Master, the developers, facilitated by either the mainly facilitated by the Scrum Master, because it's agile ways of working agreement. So when it comes to agile, the Scrum Master is the process person. Okay, so they're able to facilitate that meeting. And the purpose again for that meeting is for them to establish the team's norms. So this is what we go by. This is an agreement. This is a practice. This is what we want to go by. This is the protocol. This is the standard we want to work by. This is the way we want to work. This is our collaboration process, our development process. Is a shared agreement that the team needs to agree to. They discuss and agree on their collaboration tools. What is our communication process? What is our sprint duration? What is our meeting times? What is our feedback processes? All those things they talk about. And at the end of that meeting, they want to have a team working agreement, outlining the operational norms, like we've just said out. And we just said that the key people that need to be at that meeting. So the stakeholders don't need to be at the ways of working agreement meeting, because this ways of working agreement is the team's ways of working agreement. So the key people that need to be at that meeting is the product owner, the BA, the Scrum Master, the developers, that needs to be there. Okay. So, and for risk assessment meeting, also the key people that needs to be there are the stakeholders, the product owner, the business analyst, the tech lead, dev or tech lead, the infrastructure engineer, because it depends on where the risk is. So you want to bring in all those system architecture, the system security people in the organization. You want to bring them into that meeting also. And it's so similar to the one for waterfall. Also, it's just that maybe the key people might be different. Again, it's just to identify potential risk, assess their impact, develop a plan in place. So the difference between them is for the risk assessment for waterfall is done at the planning stage. For the risk assessment for agile, it's continuous. So it's not something that is done once and stopped and everything. Once we see a risk, the right people that need to be at that meeting where we discuss that risk are put into that meeting to discuss that risk, and then mitigate a plan, so to say, going forward. Okay, so those are the few meetings. So it might not be all the meetings, but at least those are the few meetings that we want to look at. Okay, so why do we need a project plan? Why is a project plan so important? For project management. We all know, like I said earlier on at the beginning, that there is absolutely nothing you do that you don't put a plan in place. Even sleeping, you put a plan in place. You don't come back from work, drop your bag, or with your bag and your shoes on and your clothes on, you just jump on the bed and you sleep. There are some things you do before you sleep. So everything has a plan. Everything has a plan. Before you sit on a chair, there is a plan. You look at the plan, the chair, is it dirty? Is it clean enough for me to sit on? Is it stable? Is it standing on a leveled ground that I can sit on it without falling? Everything has a plan. Okay, so project plan is very essential. It's crucial to the success of any project. It's a guide, is a guide. It guides the team from inception to completion and ensures that every aspect of the project is carefully considered and executed. So there's a lot of things that needs to be put in place. It ensures that those ones are done. Without a solid project plan in place, project can easily veer off. It can easily be derailed, so to say, veer of course, leading to missed deadlines, leading to budget overrunning, leading to misalignment of expectation. So we want to have a good plan in place. And also one of the importance of project plan is it helps to identify potential risks, which I think we've been able to talk about enough. It helps you to identify potential risks, allows you to proactively mitigate, put a mitigation plan in place, and then that helps to result in the successful completion of the project. It helps to maximize the utilization of resources. So when you put a plan in place, you know the resources you need, you know the amount of resources you need, you know when you need those resources, and then you're able to kind of effectively allocate those resources to different stages and different aspects and different times during the project. It helps you to avoid unnecessary delays or bottlenecks for the project timeline. Also, it enhances team communication. Can't say it enough. We talked about the meetings that needs to happen, and that is communication with everyone that is involved in this particular project is crucial for the success of any project. Communication is crucial for anything we do, so it's also crucial for a project completion from inception. Okay, so a project plan it plays a vital role, for improving a team's communication. When you have a plan in place, we're able to there is alignment, there is an understanding, there's shared understanding, and those shared understanding are being utilized or are being finalized. The outcome of it is that plan that has been put in place already. A project plan also helps to simplify the process of tracking and monitoring the goals. When you have a plan in place, you're able to track it. When you have a plan in place, you're able to track the progress. Where are we? This is where we're supposed to be. Are we at that place? If we're not at that place, what is the reason why we're not at that place? So you're able to track easily, you're able to monitor the project easily because of a plan that you have put in place in order to be able to do that. And lastly, also it promotes team alignment and collaboration. Okay, so for all those meetings, for all those different stages you have in the plan, they are all collaborating, they are all aligning. It ensures that the team members are aware of their roles and their responsibilities. They are it helps them to understand how their work contributes to the overall project objectives that needs to be done. So this is not limited to this, but these are just some of the important reason why a project plan is crucial and essential to any project. And it is done during the planning phase. It's generated during the planning phase of the project. Okay, so the step-by-step process of the planning stage, including the documents created, the meetings, the people involved for each approach, are suited to the project they cater for. Okay, so like we can see, the ones for waterfall is suited for the projects that waterfall caters for, and then the one for agile is suited for the ones that agile caters for. So there are some specialized projects you might have more steps in them, you might have more documents, more meeting because of the kind of projects they are, but these are just some of the basic and the key ones, okay, to the two project approaches that we have in place. Okay, so that's all done. I don't know if there's any question, but before we ask the question quickly, let me just go to the last interesting part of this session, and that is that we're going to have an assignment. Hey, so we're going to have an assignment this time around. I want each group, each project manager, scrum masters, APM, ADMs in each group. So if you have two in your group, so that doesn't mean for this assignment you're going to create two, you're just going to create one. You're going to work together to create one. So you're going to develop the following documents for your project team. So you're going to develop a work breakdown structure for your team. You're going to develop a release plan for your team. You're going to develop a resource plan with budget estimates for your team. And also you're going to develop a risk assessment with a mitigation plan. So there might be some risk that you've already noticed in your project, or dependencies that you've not, sorry, not dependencies, impediments that you've noticed in your project and all that. I want you to create a plan, a document for them. Now, all these four that I've picked can easily be done on an Excel document. And if you're using an Excel document for them, again, don't let me limit you to Excel document. You can research and go and look for templates to do it if you want to go all out there and all that. But because you're doing it for the first time, that was how I felt, you know what, let's do it on an Excel. What you do on an Excel first, if you later on research, or delve more and get a template, you can now transfer what you have in an Excel document into a template. But I just don't want you to go and pick a template, and because you're doing it for the first time, it throws you. So that was why I said very easily you can do them all on Excel documents, okay, on an Excel spreadsheet. And when you're using an Excel spreadsheet, you don't need to have 3 or 4 different Excel. So you can have just one Excel spreadsheet and use the tab. So you are using 4 tabs on the Excel document. And once you've created it and all that, please don't send me a message to say it is done or anything like that. Just create a page on your wiki and save it there, save your artifacts there. So you create a page on your wiki for PM repository, Scrum Master repository, if the Scrum Master is the one we have, APM repository, depending on who you are for your project and all that, and then just put those documents in there, okay? Or you can also name it planning phase documentation, or planning phase repository. No, just do planning phase documentation, because then that will help me when I check in there properly. So I know, I'm not sure when your sprint ends. It will be something for you to showcase when you're doing your demo. If you've done it already, don't worry, just do it and put it in your wiki. If we've done the demo already for your sprint 1, then that's fine. You can demo it during your at the end of your sprint too. Okay, so just do this document and put them there. So what we're trying to do is not just running this session, but also practicalizing what you're hearing. You go back and listen to the recording. Oh, Moji said this content, these are the contents that needs to be there, this needs to be there, this needs to be there, this needs to be there, and one thing or the other, and then you put it there. Bola was meant to give us some assignments, which she will still do, because we want you to have the practical aspect of these things we're doing. Once you start getting into the practical aspect, you're getting into the real thing. You're entering into, and the more you do the practical aspect, you create all these documents and everything, you're able to talk about them when you're at, interviews and all that. They're asking you what are the tools you use, what are the artifacts you use, what they're saying, what you can say. Or at the initial stage, at the planning stage, these are the documents I created. You're able to do that. But I would say this is a nice assignment for this for. If I were you, I won't limit myself to this for. I will look at all those documents, all those planning phase we talked about. I will research into it and try to create a document, do a document yourself for each stage that we've mentioned, even though this is the 4 that is going to be in the assignment. So please don't load your assignment with more than this 4, so that it gives me enough time to be able to see both teams, what both teams have done and all that. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone. Any questions? Any questions from anyone? Let me stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much. What I just want to is, the projects when you were in project management, is there any time it crosses paths from the uh, software and IT section to that might work for other areas too?
For which one? Sorry, I didn't get the question.
In the project management now,
Yeah.
we have the part whereby it deals mainly to the IT section. You've given examples of maybe construction companies like that. is there instances whereby it could be, you could use the skills too solely? Are there, what I wanted to say is that, is it some instance whereby it solely would work for the software and IT industry that wouldn't work for other areas?
Okay, so like we said, for waterfall, I I don't want to believe initially. Yeah, I always believe that, oh, agile is the best and all that, but agile is suited for the project it's suited for, and waterfall is suited for the project it's suited for. Now we've gotten to a stage where they are overlapping for some projects. So for some projects, you get agile rather than agile, and that's because for whatsoever they are building, if I waterfall is mainly what they're doing, but they also know that there are some parts of agile, yeah, that would benefit and add value to what they're doing. I think when Laomi, there was a session that Laomi took, and she was saying that even in automobile is now using a part of agile because she works in an automobile organization and all that, and she's an agile person. And even though she's an agile person, there is an aspect that is still waterfall. Okay, so because it's scaled agile, so there are some components and there are some teams that still needs to do waterfall, and then there are some teams that are doing the agile aspect, so they're all working together. So there are some components that work like that, so there will be some overlap like that. But there are also some projects that is purely agile, and that's when you're talking about software, when you're talking about building a product, a software product and all that. You're talking mainly about agile there. Again, having said that though, there is still some aspect like the if you work for the government, majority of the government projects are still agile. Sorry, are still waterfall, even though they are embracing agile. So when you go in and all that, you will know the parts where it might be where you have the, let me use an example of NHS. In NHS, where you have the front, what do they call them? First point of contact. Yeah. Those might be the team that are doing the agile aspect of things. But there's still some back-end people that are still concentrating on using the waterfall side of things. So it's overlapping. There are some that is purely agile, some purely waterfall, and you have also a lot now, I think, are doing agile. In my organization, they do agile. So there are some teams that do pure agile. There are some teams that do pure waterfall, and we have some teams that are overlapping where we are helping them out on. I don't know if that is able to answer your question. I think
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. Thank
you're
you.
welcome. Miracle.
Yeah, hi, Audrey. Thank you for the
Oh,
lecture.
sorry, can we stop the recording so that it's not too long
Okay,
for
okay.
people that are going to watch it later on? Yeah.